super exciting, but also incredibly intimidating. I want you to notice the energy in the room. Notice what you're feeling in your body. Were you uncomfortable as I stood up here, not saying anything? I was grounding myself. I was taking a pause. A temporary stop. When was the last time you took a pause? Really just waited until you waited to speak, waited to respond, really allowed yourself to come into your body and feel what was happening. A pause can be a really empowering self-care and self-love tool that you can use. And you don't need to do anything other than to slow down and be. Often, when there are moments of silence, we want to fill that space. I have a mentor, and she was really the first person to help me understand the power of a pause. I was in one of her classes, and we had just gone around the group to share. And we were all looking at her, waiting for her to give us the next step. And she just looked at us and then closed her eyes. And she waited for a long, long time, and I was really uncomfortable. And I was like, what is she doing? You are my teacher, guide me. And she just paused. And because she took that pause, it gave everyone else in the room the opportunity to do the same. And what I realized later is when she would take those pauses, she was connecting to herself. So she could make a conscious decision on where she wanted to lead the group next. So a pause can also create space for choice. And in choice, we have freedom. We are living in this time of constant stimulation. Yeah, we're running from one thing to the next often, and we can feel really overwhelmed and pressured and pretty stressed out and anxious. A pause can shift that. It can shift the energy from feeling that stress to coming back into your body. We also live in a time when we have access to almost anybody on this entire planet. But yet we feel so disconnected, often to the person right next to us, and sometimes even to ourselves. Sometimes we just need a moment to connect, a moment to feel seen. A pause creates those moments. These moments can be really hard to find sometimes, right? I've been coaching people for a while now, and they come to me because they often have this desire to connect. They want to connect to their bodies, to their spirituality, to their intuition, to their sexuality. They want to connect to their partner and to themselves. And they have all this great intention of connecting, yet they get stuck in the how to do it, how to implement it. And so what I started realizing is that most people, we live from the neck up. We let our minds kind of lead us, and our minds aren't the best, part of us to lead because our mind is designed to constantly create thought. So it can become this whirlwind that we can get really stuck in. And we don't get into our body. Our body is where we experience connection. Our body is where we experience life. It's dropping into our feet. It's grounding into the earth, connecting to our breath and taking that moment. And a pause creates space for those connections. And in those connections, we can have incredible moments. And as humans, we need connection. We need connection to nature. We need connection to other people. We need connection to ourselves, a higher sense. You know those moments when you get to catch the sunset at that perfect time of day, and the pinks and the oranges and the purples, and they're all just like completely making this magical picture in the sky? And in that moment, you feel like you're part of this world. You're connected to nature. Or those times when you're making love with your partner and you're so in your body and you're feeling alive and you're feeling so much pleasure and you want to go deeper. So you pause, you connect with yourself, you connect with them, and then it gives you a heightened experience. A pause connects you to your body so you can feel the depth of what you are experiencing. You know, it's pretty hard to find a pause sometimes. You know those days when you're feeling really overwhelmed and you're really uncomfortable, and it's just like the last thing that you could think about doing, right? So often in those times, we find ways to numb. We find ways to numb the uncomfortable feelings or the uncertainty. But when we numb those feelings, we're numbing the whole spectrum of feeling. And what that also does is it takes away our capacity for connection. You know, I know those days when I'm just really having a hard time, right? And I'm irritable and everything's just on the surface. And it's really hard for me to drop into my body. And usually those are the days when I will just snap. You know, it just takes like one comment or one honk of a horn and I'm just like done. Like, ah. And so it's in those times that I often say things or do things that I regret later. And that's because I didn't come down. I didn't connect to what I was truly feeling. I didn't get clear in that truth of what was going on within me. And that led to insecurity. And with that insecurity, I get defensive. And, you know, it's just all those angers and fears that come up. A pause can give you permission to find that clarity. And with clarity, you get confident. Imagine a world where we paused to connect with ourselves before we connected to another human, before we engaged with them. We connected to find what was really going on within ourselves before we connected to our partner or our child or our parent or our friends. Imagine a world where leaders around the world took a pause before they speak or tweet. And imagine what that would feel like to take a pause to connect with yourself. Imagine how your inner dialogue would shift. You know, I think this technique can be really powerful, especially when we're facing something that seems insurmountable. At one point in my life, I came to a crossroads on how I was going to live. You know, I was on this path of living as a high-functioning alcoholic, and I was really good at that. I was comfortable on that path. It was familiar to me. But I knew there was something else, and so there was this other path of sobriety, and that was scary because I didn't know what was on that path and the feelings that were going to come up, and I was uncomfortable. But I chose that path, and I keep choosing that path every day. So those days when I'm feeling like edgy and I'm struggling, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and all I want to do is go to that numb out, that old pattern. I have to take a moment. I have to pause before I reach for that drink, that old familiar friend. I pause to connect with that deeper reason as to why I chose this path. And those moments, I connect to a deeper sense of myself. So a pause has become my superpower. We could change the game if we learn how to embrace the uncertainty, embrace those feelings that are uncomfortable, embrace the silence. It can be so vulnerable to just stop and pause and listen to ourselves, our inner voice, but it's also so empowering. Because when we pause to do that, to take the time to really feel what we're feeling and what's going on, we can show up in life authentically. And that is brave. Pause without apology. Be bold and connect, and pause without apology.